Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. The Other Side lets you hear directly from the most connected players and observers across the spectrum of politics in Mississippi. From breaking news to political strategy to interviews with candidates and elected officials, we'll bring you facts, perspectives, and context that helps you cut through the noise and understand all sides of the story. I'm your host, Adam Ganucheau. Joining me today in the studio is my colleague, Bobby Harrison. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I joke about this, but every time I'm doing a one-on-one podcast with you or Jeff or whoever else, it feels like it's been rarer and rarer. So it's good to be here with you. Yeah.
Well, it's always good to be here with you. You've been so busy lately that you missed several in a row.
Yeah, well, we kind of have gotten into this rhythm. If you're a long-time listener, this isn't news to you, but we've gotten into this rhythm kind of where, we're splitting it up pretty good between me, you, and Jeff Pender and Taylor Vance. Yeah. So, we're trying to kind of spread it out depending on what's going on. Jeff and Taylor are hard at work on a couple bigger things, so we're giving them some space to do it this week, and
And we kind of also alternate between having guests out from we've had Haley Barber, former Governor Haley Barber, State Senator David Blunt. List goes on in recent weeks, but sometimes it's just us Mississippi Today guys.
That's right. Well, we're thinking and talking about sort of the biggest issues in politics and state government, anyways, and a lot of times it works out for it to be just us, and that's going to be what today's episode is, just me and you. I want to talk to you about a story, an analysis that you have published just this week. It's an interesting one to me in many ways, and I want to get into it a little bit with you. Insurance Commissioner Mike Chaney, he is a longtime Republican state elected official. He served in the legislature and various other roles across state government. Since I think 2007 has been, he was in 2007 elected insurance commissioner.
Yes, that's right. He was in the state senate before then.
That's right. And so Mike Chaney been around a long time. I think a lot of people consider him one of the sort of leaders of the modern Republican Party and helping sort of build it up to what it has become today. He turned some heads, my own included, not too long ago. He publicly said that the position of insurance commissioner, which is a statewide elected official position, it's one of 8. So, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, treasurer, auditor, ag commissioner, insurance commissioner. I think that equals 8.
Did you say Secretary of State?
I may have missed Secretary of State. There you go. So 8 of them total. Insurance commissioner is one of them. He publicly called for the insurance commissioner position to no longer be elected by voters across the state, but instead appointed by somebody. I guess we'll get into that.
That'll be. I think that'd be part of the legislative debate how that would work.
Well, just kind of walk us through what his rationale is for this. It is a very rare thing that somebody who is in elected office would suggest effectively getting rid of their position, or at least the mechanism and the sort of process of attaining that position. What is Mike Chaney's rationale on this, Bobby?
Yeah, it's fine. You talked about all the guests we've had. Commissioner Chaney was a guest earlier this summer, but he wasn't at least publicly talking about this issue at that time. This is more recent. And he is, Commissioner Chaney, as you said, was elected in 2007, so he's been there for a while. And he's not planning on running for re-election. He's 80 years old, even though he looks like he's about 50 or in terms, he seems to be in very good health, but he says he's not running for re-election. And he says this position is so complicated, and you regulating the insurance companies and trying to strike out ballots to give the insurance companies enough leeway so they're willing to write policies in the state, whether homeowner or auto insurance, but by the same token protecting the consumers. And he just says this is a position that would be better to have somebody with expertise instead of somebody who's looking at the position for a political stepping stone. Yeah. Plus, he talks about, when you run for political office, you need money to run, obviously. And so he says it creates some interesting conflicts of interest because the insurance companies can contribute campaign dollars to the candidates running for that office. So, it's going to be wide open if he doesn't run for re-election in 2027. So he just believes this is a time to make it an appointed position to take the politics out of it, if you will.
Yeah. There really hasn't been a time in modern Mississippi history that position has served effectively as a stepping stone, because I guess before he was elected, he beat out George Dale, longtime commissioner of insurance before that. I guess, we are looking at this political landscape. Of course, we've talked a lot about this sort of next election cycle on the podcast, but it will be wide open. You've got everyone from governor and lieutenant governor who are currently term limited, so those two positions will be open, which should create what we expect will be sort of musical chairs of all these other statewide elected positions. If Chaney, like you said, doesn't run again, that could be seen as an opening for somebody, maybe a political newcomer or somebody who may not have a lot of statewide name ID yet, to kind of build up their brand and like Chaney has suggested, maybe use it as a stepping stone into bigger office, which could obviously stand to hurt people who pay insurance in Mississippi and who rely on that position to get regulation and sort of hold those companies to account.
Yeah, and as you said, George Dale, who was held that position before Mike Chaney, also held it for a long time. But it's kind of we're kind of in a different political environment now. There's more competition in terms of political folks running for political office, and so I could see that position, like every other position in statewide office, being a stepping stone. And it's interesting when George Dale was defeated after Katrina, because there was people who were he was in a difficult position, and there were people, rightfully or wrongfully, who were upset how he handled the policies and everything. And after Katrina, Katrina was a once in a lifetime storm, and he would argue he did the best he could and struck out ballots, but other people were upset, and that essentially was one of the reasons he was defeated in 2007. He was defeated in the primary, by the way, by Gary Anderson, who was a black Mississippian who is one of the first. Well, it was the first black Mississippian to be a major
party nominee.
Thank you. Yeah. And but Chaney beat him in the general election.
Yeah. One comment that he made about Chaney has made about the campaign finance dollars. That's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. You have too. I mean, I'd love to maybe next time we talk to Chaney, I'd love to ask him sort of, you sure have gotten a lot of money from those companies. What are some of those conflicts that you're talking about? Because obviously the conflict of interest there, when you have a big insurance company who you're tasked with regulating, writing you a big campaign check, why wouldn't voters have some questions about that? So I think that's a fair point, but also one we might ought to apply to Chaney and his legacy as commissioner as well. I guess, Bobby, like I said, it's rare for this kind of thing to happen. Like, what kind of elected official is going to advocate for sort of stripping their own authority and power in a way like this? But
one on the way out.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's pretty much, I guess, what it would take. There is some precedent here in Mississippi, that's right? What other situations have we seen that this has happened in?
Well, my research, and I hope I didn't miss anybody, but I found there were 4 statewide offices, elected offices that are now appointed or just don't exist anymore. And it is interesting to go back and look at those. In the late 50s, early 60s, William Winter was a state tax collector, and Adam, I think you got to hear Governor Winter. It was truly a pleasure to hear him talk about how the tax collector was responsible for collecting the tax on liquor, even though Mississippi was a dry state and was not supposed to be serving liquor, but yet at the same time the state was collecting a tax on that. So Governor Winter held that position. He was appointed to it when the former commissioner, tax collector, died in office, and he held it for almost 2 terms. He was elected to it one time.
Wasn't that like the highest paid state official or something at one point? Is that right?
Yeah, because it was something ridiculous. Like they got
like commission basically.
The tax collector could keep I think it was like 10% of all state revenue to run his office, and so an efficient collector could run his office and still had money left over to pay us a pretty good salary. And so that was a plum position. But Governor Winter, after serving out of office for a short period of time, said it was an office that didn't need to be in those duties could be morphed into other offices, the treasurer and others.
Yeah.
So he went to the legislature and asked that it be eliminated, and it was. And then also John Ed Ainsworth, who was kind of a bright figure in Mississippi history, Mississippi politics, but is not known by a lot of people. He was the land. There was what was it called? The land commissioner, public lands commissioner in the 70s, and he advocated that position be eliminated. And he also advocated that those duties go primarily to the Secretary of State's office, and at the same time reform the laws on the 16th section school land to make sure that the school land was more efficiently run and provide additional money to the public schools. And he did a service in that. And then the Supreme Court clerk was in a statewide elected position, believe it or not.
That's crazy. I did not know that until I read your article.
I guess the 70s it was made an appointed position, and the Supreme Court justices appointed the clerk, which makes sense. And the other one was a state school superintendent, was a statewide elected commission. And at that time, the school board, the state school board, was a superintendent, the Secretary of State, and Lieutenant Governor, I believe. Now, of course, we have a school board elected,
Board of Education,
Board of Education from members throughout the state. And so in the 80s, that was part of Governor Winter's education reform efforts. That was made an appointed position.
Yeah. Well, William Winter was responsible for two of them. At least,
that's a good way to look at it. He played a big role in that one too.
That's right.
And interestingly, of course, Governor Winter, after he eliminated tax collector's post, he went on to be elected treasurer and to do a lot of the same duties. And then he was elected lieutenant governor and eventually governor, and had a long career in public service after eliminating that tax collector's job. John Ed Ainsworth, after eliminating the land commissioner job, ran for lieutenant governor and lost. And while he was involved in state government, never held elected office again.
Just thinking through, going back to Chaney and his sort of public push now for making the insurance commissioner position appointed rather than elected, the politics could get interesting, I think. I mean, how do you determine, and who determines sort of how a position like that is chosen? And, of course, it has to go through the legislature. They're the ones who have to make the decision. I would venture to guess off the top of my head, the insurance lobby is a top 2 or 3 lobby in that building for lawmakers. And I think they would obviously want to have a direct say in how lawmakers are thinking about this. And then, of course, you've got just the general political dynamics of, certain boards and commissions and other sort of appointed positions. They're flowing all over the place. You got a lot that are appointed by the governor, some that are on sort of rotational terms with the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, Supreme Court justice perhaps maybe in there. There are a lot of different ways that state government already handles this exact kind of thing in Mississippi. The fight over how you land on which one to appoint, an insurance commissioner, I think could be a really compelling and contentious one.
Yeah. Going back to past podcasts, I don't think you were. We interviewed Lieutenant Governor Hoseman. And he at that
I missed that one, the last one.
At that time, he brought up that they were going to be the Senate would be looking at some of these positions that were elected and whether they should be appointed. And so when we were listening to him that day, we didn't think much about that particular issue because he brought up a lot of stuff that day. But then it was just a few days later that Chaney came out and said that he thought that the insurance commissioner should be appointed instead of elected. So this has been in the works for a while. At least behind the scenes. And I think it's going to be interesting if it does go forward in the legislature. It's going to be an interesting dynamic because, we all know Governor Reeves. I think he would even admit, likes to wield a good bit of power, and so he's going to want to be able to make this appointment. It'll be a big plum for him. But there may be legislators who say, well, I assume this new position will start in 2028 when Commissioner Chaney's term ends, and there may be members of the legislature saying, no, Governor Reeves, you don't get this appointment. It should be the new governor. There'll be a new governor in 2028 also. Even perhaps, Delbert Hosemann, Lieutenant Governor, may be governor. He may be saying, "I want to make this appointment myself." Yeah. So it could be a sort of a legislative showdown, and that in itself may make it difficult to pass this during the session.
Yeah, I mean, given how the last session went, it was so hard to find major agreement among even Republican leaders on either side of the building, but even in some cases Republican leaders on the same side of the building over major sort of reform type pushes, and this is certainly one of those that, again, you have the just inherent politics of it, knowing how crazy this next election cycle is going to be already. Also throw in millions and millions of dollars that flow into the state via the insurance lobby. It is and this is not nothing, I mean, this is an important role for consumers and anybody who has insurance in Mississippi. This is a position that, as you said, it can make or break you as a politician if, in the case of a hurricane hitting the state, or, another natural disaster, or, we're dealing with a nationwide insurance crisis right now.
That's
That's no secret. Yeah. And this is a huge moment, I think, in this industry and in this sort of American system of insurance here. And this role, for all those reasons, is just it's an important one.
Yeah, Adam, it's important to point out along those lines that Mississippi is, in most states, the insurance commissioner or the regulator, the insurance regulator, is an appointed position. I believe it's 39 states or have an appointed person in that position. And normally, there's different ways to do it, but normally it's appointed by the governor with the consent of the Senate. But I think there's some states where there's some type of commission that is selected to pick the commissioner. So I mean, there's different ways to do it. So all that's going to be interesting. And this may be this could be a big deal this session in that we could be looking at insurance commissioner, and through the years there's been talk of. Most states don't have an appointed commission or elected people to maintain the state roads and bridges, state transportation system. Mississippi does. I mean, we may be the only state in the nation to do that, matter of fact. And there's been
that's right, actually.
Yeah. There's been efforts in the past to make that an appointed position too. So, as they're looking at this issue during the 2025 session, that's right. That's right. It's hard to believe this is going to be the 2025 session. But as they're looking at that, the insurance commissioner, they may be looking at other posts like transportation commission or even public service commission.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Delbert Hosemann has already said point blank, we're going to look at it, and it should be an interesting debate. To say the very least.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of those in 2025, I think.
Always. And I can't end this podcast without mentioning the pretty major role that Insurance Commissioner Chaney played last session in the very contentious debate about whether or not to expand Medicaid. I mean, this is a position, and a lot of people may look at it on paper and say, nah, whatever, like it doesn't really matter how this goes, and it's not that important. But this is a position with real prominence and power, especially in this exact sort of short-term future of the state way.
Yeah, without getting into the weeds and debating that again on the Medicaid expansion, Commissioner Chaney essentially adopted this, or had the position that was adopted by the Senate leadership that Medicaid wasn't fully expanded as allowed by federal law, just sort of halfway expanded, if you will. And so that was the position that also was of the Senate leadership, and that was one of the reasons the House and Senate couldn't agree on that to expand Medicaid.
Yeah. Well, if you're really wanting more on this, go read Bobby Harrison's analysis this week. It published Monday morning, and Bobby, thank you for being here and helping us better understand all this. And I know you'll be helping us keep a close eye on it going into next session.
Thanks, Adam.
As we cover the biggest political stories in the state, you don't want to miss an episode of The Other Side. We'll bring you more reporting from every corner of the state, sharing the voices of Mississippians and how they are impacted by the news. So what do we need from you, the listener? We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes or Stitcher, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That address is podcast@mississipitoday.org. Y'all can also reach out to me or any of my colleagues through social media or email. And as always, thank you for your feedback and support. Subscribe to our weekly podcast on your favorite podcast app or stream episodes online at mississipitoday.org/theotherside. For the Mississippi Today team, I'm Adam Ganucheau. The Other Side is produced by Mississippi Today and engineered by Blue Sky Studios. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.